Hi guys, welcome back to another Overthrow Disc Golf video. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. Today we're going to go over grips on the backhand side, everything from approach shots to drives and the in-between. So go ahead and grab your full bag while the intro is playing. Let's get started.
Drop.
Now before we dive into it, I want to go ahead and mention that this is my current take on grip. I've got a lot of concepts in here that I feel are very solid, but this is probably our third video on grip on the channel. We're going to keep you guys up to date as I learn things, as I talk to other coaches, as we experiment with tech disc, and as I experiment with things myself during the throw, constantly learning. I'm going to try to be very clear on things that I think, hey, this is pretty solid in my mind. I don't imagine this changing. And then there are going to be other practical things and details that I'm going to share that I'm going to try to use language that says I feel this way or I think. That's your cue to say, okay, this isn't like law. So my goal here is to put concepts that I'm learning into nice presentable little boxes for you, right? But not everybody fits into a little box. So it might be a little bit different for you, but hopefully it's helpful. With that, let's get to the overarching concepts. Go ahead, grab a driver or a fairway driver. We're gonna go on alignment first. So alignment, generally the alignment that most people go with will be from the base of the hand up through like this first finger, right? Some people have it lined up through this middle finger, right? And then you kind of move your fingers around, pulling your fingers into the palm. I think that this is very important that you're pulling into the palm. I'm pulling the rim of the disc into my palm. Now, whether that ends up being a power grip like I'm showing you here, or like a modified fan grip of some sort, that's up to you. But you want hand pulling into the palm. Now, there's pros with all sorts of different alignments, right? We get some people here, even some people that are kind of like here, which is kind of a weird feeling alignment to me personally. It's important here to note that whichever alignment that you choose is not intrinsically nose up or nose down. There are just like alignments that you definitely can't do. Like no matter what you did with this grip, for example, it would be nose up, right? So, but if you're anywhere kind of on the spectrum here between, I'd say kind of these two, you're probably fine. You can learn to throw nose down. Right, so some of you are looking for the perfect grip to get nose down. Stop looking there. Start learning nose down through mechanics. We have a range of grips, I believe, that you can learn to throw nose down with. So what then is the primary focus of this grip? Well, I talked about pulling into the palm here. The main thing you're looking for in a grip is one that resists coming out of your hand when you try to rotate it like this. So go ahead and grab your disc, pull it into your palm like this, and try to rotate it, if you're a righty, that is clockwise. If you're a lefty, that would be counterclockwise, right? You want a grip that is secure and able to do that. Now notice I can do that without a bunch of thumb pressure. My current belief on this is that the more thumb pressure you have, the harder it is for nose down. A lot of people want to align like this, and they think if I push the front of the disc down like this, that's how I get nose down with my grip. Maybe it gives you a tiny bit extra towards nose down, maybe, but any type of pressure that you're putting on the top of the disc is gonna start moving it towards nose up, right? So I think thumb pressure is actually just to keep the disc from wobbling on its way forward. I've had a lot of people who are mashing the thumb and they're doing all the right things mechanically to get the nose down, but the leverage of the thumb on the flight plate as they're trying to, turn the key at the end here, they're pushing down here and they're pinching up front. So these back fingers come off and turns it into nose up, despite them trying to do the correct things. So early on, I was a proponent of this front pinch here. Nowadays, I think you can do that in the beginning. You can have less fingers because when you have lower speed, you don't need as much help holding on to the disc. So you can get away with having less fingers on the disc at lower speeds. But I think that if you pinch up front here, the tendency for people is to end up nose up because these fingers end up being pretty loose. And with the pinch here, of course, you're pushing down with the thumb, right? So I think actually the pivot is real, but I don't think it's a pivot because it's pivoting around this, right? This is one of the things that confused me early on, because you'd see eagle like this with this thumb, and it's like, how is that pivoting around there? It's not. It's just the finger hook has it peel off these fingers one by one, and as it's coming off the end there, it's hooking, which creates the pivot. And at the highest speeds, maybe like you need to push your thumb down to actually hold on to it a bit longer, but for most people, I'm gonna advocate not a lot of thumb pressure there. You're going to get the pivot because it's going to roll off of these fingers and rip out of these fingers. So with that being said, where do you actually load the pressure onto? Well, I think the faster you throw, the more important it is to get this pinky on there and to get these back fingers involved as kind of the first point of resistance. When you're trying to twist it out of your hand here, you'll feel, okay, that pinky's actually pretty involved. And once it starts going, then they all start like bing, 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 like popping off real easy. So maybe not as important if you don't throw super far, but when you start moving your hand quickly, I think you start learning real fast that you want some more support on these fingers here. If I dropped, I'd for sure lose 5 miles an hour, and I don't throw that fast. But I feel like personally, I need all the help I can get at the faster speeds to hold on to it. And then at my highest speed, I might apply a little thumb pressure because I can already get the nose down decent, and then I need even more reinforcement from the thumb. But that's after I already have nose down. Now that brings us to the second concept, which is grip pressure and what I'm gonna call grip appropriation. That is using appropriate amount of grip pressure for your throw. So one of the things that you're gonna have to learn how to do, I believe, is how hard you should grip the disc. The goal on drives where we're looking for distance is to have the disc rip out of the hand, right? If you hold it too light, it's going to come out of your hand early, right? And it's not gonna make it through all of this throw where you're trying to rip it forward and your arm starts whipping out, it's gonna slip out early. Imagine like trying to hold on to the outside of a merry-go-round, right? The faster that thing's spinning, the harder you gotta hold on not to get slung around, right? And just thrown off that sucker. But if it's going pretty slow, you can have a nice gentle grip and be just fine, right? So the disc is going around, and the harder you throw, the faster you throw, the more grip pressure you're gonna need to keep it in your hand until the very end. It's not until I get up to about past 450 throwing speed where I feel like I really need to apply extra pressure or else it's slipping out. So personally, I feel like my grip pressure is a limiting factor at the top of my speed range. Before that, I want to try to maintain as loose of a grip as possible so that I can have as loose of an arm as possible, right? Which is not 100% loose, it's just as loose as possible. But that's something that I learned over time. Aside from max distance for some of you guys, and some of you might not ever have the problem. You might not ever have to hold that hard. So if you're only throwing 40 miles an hour, 200-300 feet, you probably don't need to grip it as hard as possible. Let me show you how to find your grip pressure for your stock shot, and then you can go more or less from there. Okay, so appropriate grip pressure for your stock shot, you're gonna use a driver or a fairway driver for this. I'm just gonna throw at a moderate speed, keep my grip really, really loose, like it's almost already falling out loose. Okay, here we go. Obviously came out super early. So I would go from there and I'd keep grabbing harder. If it kept slipping, I'd grab a little bit harder. It kept slipping, grab a little bit harder until I see this. A little bit pop, going straight, carrying, right? Didn't come out early. Once I find that, I would recommend going just a step further just to make sure that that was correct. That is what I would say is a true grip lock. I held on to it way too long. It shot that way. Sometimes it goes even further that way, right? So then I'd ease back up and get to that second throw that I showed you. So that's something you have to work with, not just on stock speed, but you should start with your stock speed and then move up and down your speeds. Your hand will learn, okay, how much do I actually need here? And you'll get used to that. You just got to give your mind the, hey, I'm gripping too hard, or hey, that was too soft, it slipped out, right? Get used to those feelings, start training that. Just a quick note, I would probably not use this grip, especially super hard for something deep like a putter, because you'll end up getting this. I'll be back. I got it. For the content. Yeah, it might be helpful if you find yourself in a real patent pending position. With how deep it is, it's easier to get a bit more grip underneath the disc just because of more surface area. So you probably won't ever use that for like a putter, maybe even not a mid. So that's one end of the spectrum where you want the extra whip out of the hand from it ripping out of your closed hand. Okay, now, what about the other end of the spectrum? Right, where you definitely want it coming out of your hand. Well, you've already been there actually, right? That's just putting. Open your hand, you definitely let go of that sucker, right? So that's the end of the spectrum. Now, the tough part is all the in-betweens. Now for this, I'm gonna use putters in mids, and I'm gonna show you personally what I do. For drivers and fairway drivers, it's basically the same, right? If I'm throwing 450, I'm just gonna take my honey and I'm gonna grab it the way I just showed you. Right? And if it's less than that, let's say it's 400, I'm just gonna take a fairway driver and I'm gonna grab it the same way I just showed you, right? And I'm just gonna use the disc, same thing, mid-range even. If I'm trying to get like somewhere in the 350, 400-ish range, I'm probably just gonna use a mid. With a very similar grip, I'm just gonna float this index finger a bit more so it doesn't get hooked. You can use these concepts that I'm about to tell you for the faster discs. It just isn't that practical for most people, but you can certainly take and throw a driver like an approach disc in certain utility situations. We're just not gonna spend the time to go over that now. You can go to our approach video that we have on the channel if you wanna see that. So the putters is where this is gonna come into play with most people, right? So for example, with my personal range, I've got putters that I've got to throw anywhere between 0 to 300 feet. That's a lot of different type of interaction with the disc. We have the first one that we've been talking about, where if I want to throw closer to that 300 mark, I can actually hold it like this. I can sneak this index finger up here so I don't get caught and do what I did there, right? And then throw it like a drive. We'll use that one. All right, so that's for if I want to throw a putter basically as far as I can for some reason. Now inside of that, say like 200, 250, where I need to get it there a little bit, but I definitely want to make sure I have zero potential for it just hooking out of my hand. I'm gonna switch to a modified fan grip where my pressure is gonna be here. Right, I'm basically creating a pinch point here and with my thumb, right? And then these fingers are supporting. I'm not like hooking too hard in the rim there. Okay, so I can actually get a little bit of snap, a little bit of pop off of this interaction right here. Now I mentioned thumb pressure earlier. Well, for putters, not a big problem because they like to be nose up, right? And this is just that kind of like tweener range. Not quite an approach shot feel. It's kind of like driving with the putter, but it's definitely not just touch for me at that range. That's good. Ba-doop. So that covers that. Now last one is approach style backhands. So I don't want pivot on these. I'm just trying to go point shoot. I'm gonna use that approach style form where it's more out, in, out, and where I'm gonna pop my hand. Think almost like how you would throw darts or baseball, right? Coming out similar. It's not that you're necessarily totally letting it go, but you got a little pop out of the hand, but it's not because it's got any kind of pivot or snap. It's just here and just boom, just popping the hand forward, right? So for that, similar grip, but my pressure point's actually here now towards the middle of the disc, right? Sometimes it might look more like this, but I'm pinching the middle. I'm staying away from the rim. I'm not trying to put a bunch of pressure there. I just want here. So it feels like I'm going here, focus fox, pop, pop, and that's it. You get a nice little floaty approach shot with that. So here goes the out and out. I just pop my hand where I want it to go. That's probably somewhere in the 150-ish range that I'd be using that. All right, if that doesn't get you there and you still have questions, well, we've got our Patreon one-on-one lessons. You can talk to me there. Hope this was helpful. Catch you around. Peace.